Now we're going to go over Chapter 7, Legally Selecting Employees for HOS-265, Hospitality Law. So in looking at this, a review of the chapter, you've already gone through and read through the chapter, or you're doing it along with this review. Basically, we want to get through a few things where we talk about the selection, the potential discrimination, verification, and how the employment relationship works for us as the owner, operator, manager, whatever it might be for the business. So we'll look through those. Selection, we talk about criteria for choosing the right employees. We got to make sure we get our job qualification right. We want to make sure that we are writing our job description and requiring qualifications that are essential to doing the job. When we write the qualification, we want to make sure that we stick to what is legally required. If we're required to say that must be able to lift 10 pounds to work in the kitchen, that would be appropriate because most of the boxes may weigh 10 at a minimum of 10 pounds or whatever it might be. Frozen foods or drinks or our oil or whatever it might be that's come in, that might be a qualification for the job, that you have to be able to do that. However, it might not necessarily be so appropriate to say the candidate has to be 6'5". We need to be able to explain why, right? Screening, right? Interviewing, going through, making sure that we're checking the employees versus the resume or the application versus the qualifications, and how we see that to get to an interview. We want to perform our background checks on all of our employees, and most of the time our insurance requires that. It's a pretty simple process. You can just put their information in to an online background check website, then it can be checked pretty easy. And then we want to check references too. Just have to remember that if someone does not give us the authority or the ability to check a reference, we can't just go out on our own and do so. We have to have the approval by the potential employee to check those references. So again, just on wording on job postings, make sure we focus on the job description, background, education, and licensing. You see that in one of the analyze the situation questions here about and your discussion board this week about how we need to focus on job qualifications, description, background, education, any kind of licensing that we need, and stick to that. We don't really add our opinions or the perfect employee would possess such and such. Not necessarily looking at that. We want to stick to the job description, background, education, licensing that are required. And then from there, we can screen out and select the employees that we feel best fit our needs. BFOQs might be something you've heard of or not heard of before, but by definition, it's a job qualification that is established in good faith and fairness. Hear me here, that is necessary or to safely or adequately perform the job function. So bona fide occupational qualification basically says I can make this a job qualification if it allows me to safely and adequately perform a job. So I say all that to bring up a few different points here, and this is always a really good discussion in person, but there are two things that really come to mind on different ends of the spectrum. One is the ability for Hooters, the national chain restaurant, to hire female-only servers. Now, if you do any kind of digging or Google search, you can find multiple lawsuits where Hooters has been involved in discriminatory hiring processes. Most of the time that I've seen those, dating back to 2016, I saw a couple in the late 90s as well, where they have paid out some things where male servers or male candidates wanting to be servers, where Hooters has stood by and won on many occasions, right, their attempt to to qualify BFOQ as hiring female-only servers. How do they do that? They're able to argue that it is a requirement to adequately perform the job that is what the Hooters business stands for. So again, whichever side of the fence you're on, whether you think it's the most vile thing in the world, whether you think it's essential, whether we feel like it's a capitalist country, you can run any kind of business that you want as long as it doesn't break the law. No matter what side of the fence you're on when it comes to this particular restaurant chain, it is pertinent to understanding what a BFOQ is and how it works. So let's look at the opposite end of the spectrum, character-specific requirements. Okay, so we think about Disney. If you've ever been to Disney, you see that all of the princesses look the same. They're not the same people, but they are hired to meet certain requirements that are pertinent to doing that job adequately. Just as in the picture here, you see a picture of Beast from Beauty and the Beast. Has to have a certain height requirement in order to fulfill the needs, not just of that costume, but of what the character represents. You also look at a place within Disney World called Epcot. If you've been, you understand. If not, you can do a little research on it. But they have what's called a tour of the worlds, or the World Adventure. And they have different stops along the route of how, the restaurants and shops that are all run based on the culture and the aspects of that country. So let's say, for instance, one of the countries of Germany. Within that country, everyone that works there in that country, in the stores, in the restaurant, in the ride, if there's a ride in there, all of those are German employees. They speak German. They are familiar with the German culture, either having been born there or have family, whatever it might be. But they are essential to providing you, the guest, with the ability to be immersed into German culture and feel like you've stepped into a part of Germany. So again, whether you agree or disagree with either one of these and how they operate is not important to this discussion. It is just to show you that there are ways to have the BFOQ in practice that seem a little more out there than just, you must have a master's degree, you must be able to lift 10 pounds, that kind of thing. As we move through the chapter, we talk about areas that we want to make sure are protected through discrimination. And if we move over to page 126, there are a few different areas that help protect both the employer and the employee. So the Civil Rights Act of 1964 helps everyone not be discriminated against based on those things listed: race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. You can't actively discriminate against someone and not give them a job, or not give them a job, but not hire them, or allow them to be up for a promotion or a raise or anything like that based on one of those areas. You also have the Americans Disabilities Act, right? And that said we can't discriminate against anyone with a disability. Discrimination, same kind of thing. You can't discriminate against anyone based on their age and ability to do anything, and it really protects those intended, the ADEA, for those who are 40 years or older from employment based on their description, but their age. But the discrimination is on age for everyone, but was intended originally for those 40 and above. The Pregnancy Act, you can see that on page 129. It basically says that we can't discriminate against anybody and deny them employment because of childbirth. So often you see, or you hear, I'm pregnant, I'm probably not going to get this job. While you may not get the job, it can't be because of pregnancy, right? It can't be because you're pregnant and you will be on maternity leave there shortly after being hired. Someone, again, may not hire you for the job, but if they come out and say, and you feel like it was based on your your current pregnancy, then you are 100% in the right to seek legal action. And then there's the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008, and that's on page 129 as well. And basically it says we can't discriminate for employment based on any genetic information the candidate or the candidate's family. So basically, again, it kind of falls under some of the Civil Rights Act about race, color, religion, things like that. But we can't discriminate against someone that is actively applying for a job based on any type of genetic information that we may come across. For verification purposes of employment, we're still on page 129 there. Immigration Reform and Control. That's our I-9s. If you've gotten a job lately, that's you filling out an I-9. And basically, that says, that employers, can't knowingly hire someone to work in the United States either because the individual is in the country illegally or because his or her immigration residency status does not allow employment. So really what that does is it allows us to make sure that the person is legally in the country. And we do have to fill that out for every employee if we are doing things legally. The Fair Labor Standards Act, it protects certain classes of people by age. So I put a couple bullet points there, and you can see it over the actual description of each of those on page 130. But 14 and 15-year-olds can only do certain things. They can't just have a full-on job that's just whatever job is out there. They can't do it. There's certain minimum requirements they have to meet, one of which is that they can't work more than 3 hours on a school day or more than 18 hours in a week. Okay, so that's just one of those. 16 and 17-year-olds can work any job that's not deemed hazardous. Okay, and then anybody 18 plus, we're fair game to do any job that we are qualified and hired to do. Just a few things we've probably seen or heard about at-will employment before. At-will employment basically says that employers have the right to hire whoever they choose and fire whoever they choose. And they don't have to give you a reason to do so. In the state of South Carolina, I can hire you to be a line cook today. I can fire you tomorrow with as long as I did so, at will. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to say, well, I fired you because of this, this, and this. I can just say, unfortunately, we do not need your services any longer. And then our contract of employment is disbanded. Labor unions, we don't have so many of the labor unions here in the South. But as you get up into the Northeast, with a lot of the old steel mills and things like that, the steel workers industry labor union is still one of the largest in the United States, but they basically act on behalf of a group of employees to better protect their rights and bargain with major corporations to make sure they're treated fairly. And there's a pretty good discussion about all of what labor unions and the collective bargaining agreements starting on page 135.